Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. My name is Jane Shodel. I'm one of the festival programmers, and I'd like to welcome you to today's screening of The Other Story from Israel, directed by Avi Nesher. Yeah. To begin, we would like to acknowledge that today's event is taking place on the treaty territory of the Mississaugas of New Credit and the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and the Huron-Wendat. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work in the community. This film is eligible for the Grosh People's Choice Award. You can vote for your favorite films at tiff.net/vote. We would like to thank Foresight Unlimited for providing us with this film, and thank you to the Israeli Film Fund for their generous support. Today's screening is part of the Tiff Speaker Series in partnership with the University of Toronto's Munk School of Global Affairs and Public Policy. The series offers an extended Q&A with the filmmaker and a subject expert to help gain a deeper understanding of the film's social and political context and the broader issues facing the world today. We would like to welcome Janice Stein from the Munk School, who will be absolutely very proud and pleased to have her today, who will be joined by the director of the film, Avi Nesher, on stage following the screening. No, it's not yet.
Not?
No, I'm not finished. Okay.
I'm not here. Ignore me. Ignore me.
No. We talked about this. Yeah, okay. Here's the nice things I'd like to say about the film. The film is written by Avi Nesher and Noam Spancer and directed by Avi Nesher. This is the fifth of Avi Nesher's films we've had the pleasure of presenting here at TIFF. Previous titles include The Secrets, The Matchmaker, The Wonders, and most recently, Past Life. As with those films, Nesher utilizes strong female protagonists to explore fundamental contemporary issues of both society and the soul. This new film, The Other Story, may be the most complex and resonant so far. In it, two young women, one fleeing the chaos of secular hedonism for the comforts of religion, and the other desperate to transcend her religious upbringing for spiritual freedom. These two women cross paths, leading to unexpected consequences for both. The film also circles around the question of what is truth, or perhaps most pointedly, whose truth is the truth, which I think is a very timely and urgent question of our time. It is powered by strong performances from a cast that is led by award-winning actor Sasson Gabay, currently starring in Broadway in The Brand's Visit in the role he originated in the original film of the same title, which is amazing, and Maya Dagan, who you may remember from The Matchmaker. As we mentioned, that's all my stuff. We're very pleased to have the extended Q&A afterwards, but please join me in welcoming Avi Nesher. Okay. Yeah. Yes.
We're good?
It's all yours.
It's happening? Okay. Thank you so much for coming. It's not, I never take this for granted. You know, I do every film as though it's my very first film. I think it's the only way one can make films because you have to be very passionate. It's not a vocation, it's a passion. So you always start from scratch and you always try to do something differently and you never know if anyone will show up to see. So when I made my first film many years ago, I really didn't know if anybody would come, and the producer said, it's too experimental, nobody will see it, blah, blah, blah. I went with a leading actor to a big theater in Tel Aviv, and we were afraid, like 1,000 seats. We would go in, and there'll be no one. And it was packed completely. And there were people sitting in the first row, and I wanted to go and hug every single one of them. Don't be afraid, I will not be hugging anybody today. I'm way past it. So we'll be talking afterwards, so I won't talk much. I want to introduce to you two extraordinary actors, really two of the finest actors of Israel making their way to the international stage, playing in this movie, already have gotten some really great reviews. I would like first to introduce an actor who's now on Broadway in The Brand's Visit. He made me see it a few days ago. I agreed. It was amazing. He's amazing in the play. He's amazing in this movie. Mr. Sasson Gabay, please.
Hi. Good afternoon to you. I'm really glad. Hi, Dudi. I'm really glad to be here. It's my first time in Toronto Film Festival, and I'm very excited about it. I know Avi for many years. I know his films, and I was looking forward for years to work with him. And I thought it never would happen, but here it does. And I haven't seen the film yet. Came right from New York, where I'm working right now, in a Broadway show, and I'm really excited. I think I'm the most excited man in this auditorium. So I'm really looking forward, and I wish us all a very pleasant screening. Thank you.
Okay. And now I would like to introduce somebody who already has seen the movie, but she made me take her again to see the movie. Maya Dagan is an extraordinary stage and film actress. She won Best Actress for The Matchmaker, which some of you might have seen. She does a great job in this movie. She's one of my favorite people in the universe. She's really, really funny and a great actress. Maya Dagan, please.
Avi, marry me. Shalom. Shana Tova. I'm so excited to be here. Actually, this is my first time at a movie festival. Excited to be here. I saw the movie. I wanted to ruin your surprise. It's very good. And you're gonna be shocked because I play the mother and not the daughter. I was shocked also when Avi told me, I don't know what happened to him. But I think it's a very good movie because it touches every emotion possible, from laughter to sadness to a love of a mother to a daughter to her God. And I hope you enjoy it. I'm so excited to be here with Sasson, who's been my partner for many years in the theater, and with Avi, who's made me the woman I am. Okay, thank you very much.
And thank you very much. We'll talk after the movie. And again, thank you so much for coming. It's not taken for granted. I'm really moved. Thank you very much.
So, how did you like the film? Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Keith Benny. I'm the Senior Manager of Adult Learning here at Tiff. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this extended conversation as part of the Tiff Speaker Series, which brings filmmakers together with a subject expert. Here, the films serve as a springboard to talk about some of the more social and political themes facing the world today. We'd like to thank the University of Toronto's Munk School of Global Affairs and Public Policy for their partnership on this initiative, as well as to the speakers for dedicating their time and their expertise. We also invite you to join us year-round for some of our talks programs, Real Talk, Books on Film, and some of our In Conversation With events here at the Lightbox to continue the conversation. Today, it's our pleasure to have Janice Stein, our Munk School speaker, lead the conversation today about The Other Story. Janice Stein, the founding director of the Munk School, is also a member of the Order of Canada. Janice is an internationally renowned expert in international conflict management, foreign policy decision-making, and negotiation theory. So to lead the conversation, please join me in welcoming Janice Stein and the director of The Other Story, Avi Nesher. Yeah, is that okay? Yeah. Okay. All right. Sure.
Well, that was a fascinating film to watch. I'm going to start by asking you, Avi, why did you pick the title The Other Story?
Well, there's an old Jewish joke about this drunkard who crosses the street and he finally gets there and he finds some people and he says, "How do I get to the other side?" And they tell him, "You just came from the other side." And he said, "Funny thing, they told me it was here." So, you know, I mean, I come from a country which is deeply divided. We do not own the rights to the notion of division. Your neighbors from the south are experiencing major division, and Turkey. I mean, we seem to be living in a world which is growing more and more divisive every day. But in Israel, it's a really unique phenomenon because I grew up in a socialist Israel, and the country has changed a lot, and it's been drifting to the right and been drifting towards religion. And the phenomena we have seen here of a lot of younger people go back to religion because, there's no vacuum in nature. So if you lose faith in socialism, something else must come in. And in Israel, it has been religion. And the country is deeply divided between, secular Jews and religious Jews. And to people of my background and my parents' background and my children's background, this country might turn into a theocracy, and it scares us. On the other hand, that's the way we see it. And the other side sees it completely differently. So we have a situation where we are very divided, and each side thinks they're totally right, and they know the truth, and the other side is totally wrong. And if we insist on the truth, it's going to be very badly. And if we don't come to recognize the legitimacy of the other's point of view, it's going to end very badly. And my notion that the Israel I grew up in can ever be the same is wrong, A, because it's not going to happen, and B, maybe it doesn't need to happen. It's just my own memory and my own childhood and my own affection. So this movie was made for many reasons, but one of them, I really saw a theater with Haredim and secular Jews watching it together. And we actually had a lot of Haredi people working on the movie. It was very, very important to me that the point of view of the film is not from the parents' point of view. And that if you notice that the girl Anat, she does not go secular at the end. She does not renounce God. She does not change her ways. She's no longer ashamed of her scar. If you notice, the blouse is more open. She will not be as strict as Haredim insist. She will be the new Jew, the new Israeli, the new woman. She will reinvent being what Israeli is all about. And so will the young man who falls on his knees, because you cannot play the old, Orthodox game when man is sovereign and woman is separate. It's going to change. So we change and then change. And the movie ends with a simple word, tolerable. In many ways, we have to tolerate each other, and we cannot exactly get what we want. And that's, I'm really big on not seeking justice, but somehow seeking, a way of living together. And this is what the movie is about.
Tolerable is a kind of bare minimum. That's what tolerable. I'll tolerate you, but kind of barely, right?
Well, it's. Anything beyond it is hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Right. It's. You can't pretend you like it. You can't pretend you agree with it. I don't think her parents will suddenly change. They will not.
No, they will not.
If she marries him, there will be problems. It will be complicated. But
there are problems already in the movie before she marries him.
But it's. I'd like to think at the end when the grandfather, the lovely Sasson Gabbai.
By the way, Sasson is here. I don't know about you. I thought he gave a phenomenal performance. Just phenomenal.
Thank you. And
Mila.
Maya Dagan.
Who was the mother. Tali. Who bends and is much more flexible in the movie.
Yeah. They will have to accept it. They will not like it.
Avi, let me ask you, if we go up a level, you could say this is a movie about women. You could say that.
Yes.
Is it a movie about women for you?
Well, a funny thing that the last few movies I've made, I've written through female protagonists.
Right, because this one clearly
And
has.
it's not because I'm ready for an operation. And one of the reasons is because my daughter is here, who's now 21, and I've been following the way she grew up. And I write a lot about young people, and I used to write about myself as a young person, and now in a way I kind of write through her. And the real revolutionaries in this world are women. Women change the world. When Palestinian women and Israeli women get together, right. That other nonsense will end. But that will take some doing, obviously.
So let me take you back in the movie to something I found so fascinating, and I see it differently each time I watch it. The cult, which is described as a pagan cult. Those are the words used in the movie. But it's not actually pagan. It's Canaanite and or Canaanite. And there is an Asteret, a woman goddess, right? Who's central It's a wonderful big replica of the Ashtot that you find in many of the museums. And the ritual is all about sexual liberation, cutting the bonds. And when the two women are there, one with the other, it's so clear that Sari is really talking to a nut, to the Haredi.
Yeah, well, belief is a human necessity, right? We all, I mean, even atheists believe in something, which is nothing, right?
No, that's not fair. They just don't believe in divine intervention.
Yes, but we need to believe. I mean, we need to give meaning to our life. We need a value system, and we need to define what is moral and what is not. And even Jean-Paul Sartre, on a bad day, had something to look up to.
Right.
So. A belief system is something as ancient as humanity.
But why counterpose those two? And it was interesting because you've told us that the Haredi community in Israel, there were screenings separate for them. There were screenings that were mixed communities, and that the Haredi community has warmly received this movie. But there is a way of reading this: the cult versus the Haredim, and it's the cult says, we will liberate you Orthodox women.
Well, those pagan societies in Israel, they're very feminist,
But they're not necessarily pagan. Why do we call them pagan?
Because that's the way they call themselves. Mm-hmm. This is actually the women in the ritual are women from those cults. And there's I wouldn't presume to direct such a scene. I mean, I would know. And the ritual is the real ritual. I mean, right. They were gracious enough to have the young woman who plays Sari be with them for months and months. There are various ways of uplifting your shackles, which is the way. So a nut escapes our secular world, which has its flaws and its pluses, and she accepts the shackles of Orthodox Judaism. And Sari escapes Orthodox Judaism, into a world that promises liberation. None of it works perfectly. And by the time, as Sari says, you think I really believe, in a stone image. Mm-hmm. So these are two young women who are trying to invent young, independent women who dictate their own course and basically do not have the course of their own personal history dictated by men. And like she says, you can't just get up and do it. I mean, you need a ritual. And we all need rituals, right? And this movie, in many ways, is also about, the human ritual.
So was socialism a ritual for your generation? That's what it was, just a ritual?
Oh, you have no idea. I'm wearing blue jeans. When I was 10 in Israel, if you were part of the socialist movement, you could not wear jeans. It was a capitalist,
right.
And so socialism in Israel was as fanatical as Jewish orthodoxy is. I mean, socialism was very, very extreme because, again, religions come in various shapes and forms. In an interesting story, the young man who's the singer is a secular young man who turned Haredi. And he's really Haredi, and he's a big pop star in Israel. He wrote all the really wonderful songs in the movie. And we auditioned him, and he never acted before. And I loved him because I really involved my actors in creating characters, and I thought he would add so much to the character. And when I took him, he said, if you're crazy enough to have me, I'm crazy enough to do it. And in many ways, he is the character. He is the character.
Tell me, when the movie was screened in the Haredi community in Israel, and yet they loved it, they didn't feel the criticism?
The movie criticizes everything. These two parents are from hell, right? These two secular parents, believing in secular. I mean, this guy abandoned his wife and his children. The mother is very material. She's a saleswoman. I mean, there's nothing. There are people like everyone else. So, secularism is as flawed. I mean, my side is as flawed as the other side. My story is as flawed as the other story. I just happen to like my story better. But it's about human flaws and about having to embrace it because perfection is unachievable.
So I said to Avi when we were just talking outside, because to me this is a film mainly about women and the different experiences in different worlds. But the best lines in the movie were Sasson's. So the line I thought was absolutely remarkable. I'm sure every parent in this room heard that line. When a child is born, two children are born at the same time. Everybody in the room is shaking their head with me now. The one that you hope for and the one that you have.
Yes.
Is that a metaphor for Israel, for you?
It's a metaphor for everybody, but to go back to what you said, for me, the relationship between Sasson's character and the father, you have a father and a son, who are two psychologists and have a very difficult relationship. And the other day, the first screening, I was asked, why don't they hug at the end? And I answered that I put tremendous trust in my actors, and Sasson really brought so much of himself into the character. And when we shot the scene, this is how Sasson felt. This is how he felt about a child of his. And it's the human experience. And yes, you can draw from it about the Israeli experience, but
So if you think about it, in terms of this conversation between the Orthodox and the so-called secular. I never say secular because I don't really think they exist, as I said to Avi, but the so-called secular. Who's the child you hoped for and who's the child you have?
Well, I think the real question, who is the child who might get sacrificed? We start from sacrifice because when I was 18, I went off to war. I was really, really gung-ho. And my son is about to turn 18, and I'm really, really worried because, I have my doubts about, the government at this point, and I really would not want him to get put in harm's way. But it's not like our neighbors seek peace and our government is a warmonger. It takes two to tango, and God knows these two have been tangoing for quite some time. And the children are the one who get sacrificed, the Israeli children, the Palestinian children, and in many ways, if you play that game, you're a sucker. So when I went off to war, I was in the Yom Kippur War, I remember I remember I was an intelligence officer and I was in the Israeli headquarters, and I remember the Israeli chief of staff saying we might be facing a second Holocaust where Egyptian tank columns were rolling towards Tel Aviv. And I saw Sasson in the band's visit, which is a wonderful thing, and he plays an Egyptian colonel, and not a word was mentioned about the war. And the memory of this war is gone, and Egyptians are no longer an issue. And it shows you that peace is possible if there's enough motivation and if people don't keep fanning the flames, which Iranians do and Russians do and perhaps Americans do. Lots of interest in the game. So the notion of children is really a very sensitive one because at the end they pay a price for our sins. And I say our because now I'm a part of the generation that is part of creating those sins.
Absolutely. The movie is hopeful, actually, about the capacity, as you say, to tolerate, right? But in Israeli society now, you would probably agree it's more polarized, that it has been more divided. The bill that just went through the Knesset 2 months ago has sharpened those divisions. Is your movie an expression of what you see or what you hope for in your country?
Well, at the end of this movie, there's the beginning of dialogue. When the grandfather and the daughter are in the car, and they're talking, and he agrees not to be annoyed by the music, which the much hated groom-to-be is singing. That's the right first step. But the division within Israel is very concrete, but I will remind you that when I was 12, the Israeli government did not allow the Beatles to perform in Israel because they were afraid they would corrupt the youth of the country. So it's a very, very young country, and it used to be a wonder boy, and now it's a teenager with acne. And teenage years are difficult, and we all went through it. And hopefully you survive it, and you grow up to be a fine young man or woman. And we're going through a patch, but it's very important not to confuse, the growing up process with the falling apart process. And this is just part of You know, I mean, there was a great war in America between the South and the North. You know, I hope this movie, in its own very small way, is meant to create dialogue between two opposing forces in Israeli society that could turn into enemies really, really easily. For me, art needs to play a very strong and vibrant part in trying to avoid it. And the way to do it is not through attacking the other side, but to discussing, you know, to creating dialogue and to say, you know, that old joke. This is the other side, and this is the other side, and they're both sidewalks.
I see Kevin wants to open this up. Let me ask one quick last one. The other line that you gave Sasson in this movie, happy people don't turn to God.
C'est la vie.
Probably says it all, doesn't it? That's not an opening to dialogue.
Well, I have many. Again, the interesting thing about this singer, we'll become really, really close, and he claims that I am the greatest believer of all secular people he knows, and I claim he's the most secular of all Hasidic people he knows, and we get along like gangbusters.
That's actually wonderful.
And he just sent me a message from, there's a place called Uman in Ukraine, which is where the Baal Shem Tov, I think, is buried, and he went there, and it's really, I mean, talk about paganism, right? I mean, to go to a grave and to pray and the whole thing, and it's fine. And it's fine. It's a ritual. It works for you. So he sends me this wonderful text for New Year. And my dialogue with him is what I would hope for within Israeli society. I mean, it's easier when you write such great songs, but...
It's a wonderful time of year to hear these sentiments, isn't it? Over to you.
So time for your questions. If you have one, please put your hand up. I'll repeat the question. And yep, let's go front row. So the question...
You know, just help everybody out here. There is a difference between the Haredi or Orthodox community and the far right community. There's some overlap, but they're not the same communities. Just to let before Avi answers that question.
And so the question was about the characterization of the male characters.
Yeah, this is based on a true story. I mean, the guy who wrote the screenplay with me is the psychologist. He is the father, and the Sasson character is his grandfather. These people are facing a grave personal issue within their own life. They do not discuss politics all that much because they have a great issue. They're about to lose their daughter. That's the way they see it. So, it's I take great offense to people who expect Israeli movies to be one-dimensional and deal only with one problem. I mean, a wise man once told me, everywhere in the world they cook rice with water, right? So Israel is a country, and we have personal problems, and we have issues, and we have neighbors, and it's a complicated situation, but our internal problems are far greater, and they have nothing to do with right and left. They have to do with people who obey a high authority and people who believe in a value system that was invented by men. And it's a huge clash, and that is the major clash in Israel. And these are these people. That has nothing to do with right and left.
Some do.
No, again, in Israel, it's a tightrope walk because supposedly everybody is allowed to. But there's no separation of church and state in Israel, which is a big problem. And politically, it's expedient for both labor. I mean, when labor was in control, they made as many compromises as the right does now. So it's a very tricky place because the Orthodox parties, the very fact that you have parties which are religious is almost like an oxymoron in a democracy. And yet, this country came about in a very strange way after a Holocaust, was, surrounded by nations that opposed it. It's not your traditional democracy. It's not America. It's not Canada. We wish we were. We live in a specific part of the world. You don't have neighbors like this, not to the right, not to the left. You are pissed off at Trump. Believe me, we have worse neighbors. So it's a tricky place. And some Haredi serve in the army, but it's not totally compulsory because politically, they're let out of it.
But there is a change. There is new legislation that was passed that and increasing numbers of Orthodox Jews are serving in the army or doing community service. It's a significant change in the last 3 years.
It's a society in flux. It's a teenage with the acne. It eventually, I have great belief in Israel. I really do. Some people pack up, I don't. I'm not going anywhere. It's my country. I'm going to stick around and do what I can to make it better. It's very plain and simple. But, it's going to be a bumpy ride. The teenage will have good days and bad days. That's the way it's going to be.
There's a question over on this side here. Yes. The question was, do you see a thread in filmmaking about the secular and religious communities, and is this a theme in filmmaking in Israel?
In many ways, this issue is not unlike the race issue in America of the 60s. I'm a great believer in the power of storytelling, and I'm a great believer in the power of cinema and television. And when I was growing up, when I was a kid in New York City, there was a television series called I Spy, with Bill Cosby and Robert Cobb, and just having a black man and a white man having a relationship and doing shenanigans, made it possible for us to think that eventually we can get along. And then came, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? And then came The Heat of the Night. And there's something, I believe that you start there and you end with Obama. You start showing that something is possible. It takes some time, and then it becomes possible. And Israeli films right now, discuss this secular religious clash because the clash is part of our life. There's nothing, if my daughter will become religious, it will be a huge problem for me. I'm ashamed to say, because she will become the other for me, and I will become the other for her children. It's a situation, but the only way to deal with it is to open it up for discussion in such a way that one will be able to embrace it, because it's not going to go away. It's going to be part of Israel. Israel will not go back to being the country with the kibbutz and the this and the that. It's not going to happen, But we will not allow it to become a theocracy either. That's not going to happen either, because people like those young people in the movie, they're changing Orthodoxy as well. So it's a very vibrant country. It's all changing. And cinema, I'll tell you a story about it. I made a movie called The Secrets a while ago. It was also at Tiff, about two young women who seek education, because if you're Orthodox and you're a woman, you're not supposed to learn too much. And the movie came out, and if you are Orthodox woman, you are not allowed to see films. You're not allowed to. And I would, when the movie opened, the movie did very well, and I would notice that in the 10 a.m. shows, there were a lot of people, and I was wondering, don't people have a job to go to? I mean, why are there so many people? And one time I visited a theater, and I walked in, and there were 60 Orthodox women spread throughout the whole theater experiencing this movie. And I would like to believe they took the movie back home with them, and I would like to believe that part of what's happening now within the Orthodox world, where women insisting on getting representation, because women are not allowed into Orthodox parties in Israel. That will change too. And with this change, and with our secular understanding that we are not, the laws of masters of the country, everything will change.
Avi, just to add one quick sentence, probably 30 years ago in Israeli film, there were lots of films about Ashkenazim and Sephardim. Well, they're gone. They don't make films about that now because that problem has virtually gone.
But part of the reason it's gone because films were made about that.
That's correct.
And we dealt with it. I mean, we looked the devil in the eye, and we admitted our own bigotry, and we admitted our own racism, and a movie like Turn Left at the End of the World. And again, for me, art is a great venue of promoting discussion. And when you discuss, you put down, your billy clubs, and you have a discussion, and this is exactly where we want to go.
Absolutely.
I think that's the perfect note to end on. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Please join me in thanking Avi Nesher and Janice Stein.
Thank you very much.
The most bigotry I've ever heard of secular Judaism is, I go all the time because I teach at the university. We talk about penguins.
That's horrible.